What is the most memorable experience that you have had at a wedding?
Most memorable experience I have had. See, I've been a bridesmaid a lot. I think I've been bridesmaid nearly 4 times. So there's things that my parents have told me about where I had a real habit of going to weddings and falling asleep under tables as a child and then not being able to find me. But I think my favourite moment of all time at a wedding was I was the only bridesmaid of 3 that wasn't directly related to the bride. So I already felt very smug with myself that I had made it ahead of all of her other friends to be her bridesmaid. And her aunt came up and was like chatting to me. And her aunt has known me since I was like 4 years old. So they're basically family anyway. Yeah. And her aunt was just like, oh, are you seeing anybody? And I was like, no, like, I've been single forever. And she was just like, oh, these things can be so hard when you're alone. And then just walked away. And I was just like, okay. I think someone's projecting, but okay. So I think that to me is very memorable because I have loads of instances where people say stuff like that to me, but at a wedding, I mean, having said that, at the same wedding, the bride didn't want people to be bored. So our evening entertainment was volleyball and tug of war. So we had like a rope that I also remember that the bride's side of the family won, and I was on the bride's side of the family, so.
Nice. Yeah,
great wedding. Great wedding.
That sounds awesome. I'm glad I asked that question because that was amazing. So, jumping to fat lip for a second. So, what is it? In the beginning, in the front matter of it, you say something along the lines of, and she promises her next book will be fictional. So I wondered, what led to wanting to do this one first?
So Fat Lip is kind of an anomaly anyway, because where I was doing ghostwriting, and still am, I found it really hard to kind of get clients on board because they wanted to see my writing style or things that I had done before. But obviously when you ghostwrite, the other person has all of the copyright to it. Like you don't own any of it. Yeah. So I was trying to find a way where I could show them different writing styles and my ability to write in different formats or in different, whether it's non-fiction or fiction or comedy or tragedy or whatever, and have like as many facets to writing as I could fit into a few thousand words, because I didn't want to write loads, but I wanted to have something that I could give to my clients basically. And I thought, I used to blog about my life anyway, so when I was about 18 years old and just heading off to uni, I had a blog and I had about 40,000 people reading it every week, and it would be like the stories in Fat Lip where I'm like, oh, this boy said something really stupid, we can all have a ha about it together. Yeah. You know, and it used to be like I'd go out of my way to find situational stuff that I could talk about, or like my family and friends and things like that, and it was all those little bits of me, and I've always been very, very good at making myself the butt of the joke. Like I've got no problem doing that. Let's all have a good laugh at my expense kind of thing. So when I was thinking about different things that I could write, I was thinking, well, I know there's an audience for that. So it was a case of, I knew I'd have an audience for that, and I knew that was something that I would be quite good at doing. So it was going to be a business card that I could give people to show my different styles of writing, but something that I could then just enjoy writing. And it was never meant to be super, super serious, except that then everyone was really nice about it and kept like including it in content, and I was like, oh, this is like a real thing now. And people were like really excited, and like people still ask me if I'm gonna do a Fat Lip Volume 2, which is like a massive compliment considering I knocked that out in like a couple of months. Like it really didn't take me long to write at all, and it was fun, and it was just a thing that I made. But I did promise, because there's quite a few people obviously that I know in it, I did say that the next thing I wrote was going to be fiction. And it wouldn't be based on anyone or any real experiences. Because it just felt, you know, if I did another book about all of my friends, I would eventually run out of friends.
Right,
They're just like, no, we don't want to be in this anymore, you know?
Tired of winding up in these stories.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I like that, though. That's a clever way to develop a portfolio as a ghostwriter, for sure. Because you're right, you don't get, like... Most of the time you can't build... It's hard to build a portfolio as a ghostwriter.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so then... There was... Whenever I picked up Bridesmaid's Survival Guide, and it was about a younger protagonist, I was like, oh, it's a Bridesmaid's Survival Guide, but like YA. So what how'd that come about?
So I love reading YA. As a form, I find it fast-paced. I find that the characters don't know themselves so well that they get themselves stuck in who they should be or what the audience expects them to be. I think that YA can be a lot more honest than adult fiction, and I think it also lends itself to levity. You know, teenagers, it's very easy to embarrass a teenager because they've, like, you know, everything is really, really important. And I think when it came to it being like, I wanted it to be a romance comedy, and I thought I can grow up with the characters. So this is going to be the first of like a series anyway. So I wanted to start at like a reasonable age where it was essentially going to be like the YA romances that I grew up with. You know, the Meg Cabots and that kind of like bantery teen drama. You know, the Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging, like things like that I really, really enjoyed reading as a teen. I could then lean into again. And I do find that my writing lends itself to YA because then it's faster paced and I can lean in to like the fun dialogue and stuff like that. Like, I just think there's just something really fun about writing YA, and that's probably because I just have fun reading YA. It just kind of like, it just works, I think.
Okay, alright. So then, I didn't know that you were planning for it to be a series. So you're actually taking these characters and we're going to follow them into like adulthood or new adult genre?
Yeah. Awesome. So there'll be 5 books and it will be over across 2.5 years basically, because they're in lower 6th to begin with. They will then go into university and it will kind of like carry on from there. So yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but essentially you've got Bridesmaid Survival Guide as first, then you've got a couple that will still be at school, and then there'll be a freshers one, and like
alright. So it's kind of following the same age arc as kind of like Heartstopper is, where they're sort of like coming out into what's supposed to be the real world and doing that whole thing, trying to adult. I like that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So then, do you think that you've pretty much found your genre then with this series? Or are you kind of just throwing out niche altogether?
I don't think I could niche myself even if I tried, because I read too much of too many different things, and I have too many ideas like that are just different genres. Because like the book that I wrote for my master's degree is an urban fantasy, and the next project that I'm really excited for is high fantasy. But I've also written like TV scripts that are murder mysteries. I read a lot of historical fiction. I need an agent to just be like, we're paying you to just write this. Like, that's what I need. And at the moment, because I'm leaning into the self-publishing world, you can write whatever you like. Like, you don't have to, here's my box. And I think Hannah O'Donnell will probably always be the name that I use for romance and contemporaries, but that's not to say that that's all I'll ever write, because I don't think I could, even if I tried, just write one genre. Like, I don't have the attention span for that. I will definitely write other stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I feel the same way about my writing. It's intimidating to think about traditional publishing because they're like, whatever you break into, you need to plan to be there for 5 years. And it's like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can stay with the same genre for 5 years. That seems very...
But to be fair, 5 years of one genre is probably only 2, maybe 3 books. Like, unless you're going to do a Sarah J. Maas or Cassandra Clare where you bang out a book every single year, or like James Patterson, who has a team of people who will bang out a book for you every 6 months. Like, I think, 2 or 3 books is fine. And I think if I was to go in, if I was to take on an agent and they were like, right, strictly high fantasy, we want 3 books out of you, I could easily do that. If I was to be like, yeah, I will work on that for sure, but I'm also going to work on this stuff, and you've got to be okay with that, because this is working on this thing is going to stop me going too far with this. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be
yeah. Cool. So I know that you were a teacher for a while, but did you always sort of want to be a writer? Like, was that end goal the whole time, and if not, when did that kind of become the thing you were doing?
So, as much as I can remember, I've always wanted to write. I don't think I wanted to be a writer until it came to deciding what my uni degree was going to be. And before that, I wanted to be a psychiatrist. I wanted to study psychology, I wanted to go to medical school, and I had this real determination that was absolutely what I was going to do. And there was only one teeny tiny issue with that, and that was that I was never going to get into medical school. Like, I am just not smart enough, and I am not like driven enough to be like, this is happening. So I did, we have A-levels over here in the UK. And basically you get to pick 4 subjects for your A-levels, and then you'll end up picking something similar to that when you go to degree. And I chose maths, biology, chemistry and psychology. And I only passed psychology. Like, I didn't even get like a passing grade in the others, because I had done really well at GCSE, and I was at a grammar school, and they always tell you at grammar school, because you have to do a test to get into those schools, they're constantly like, oh, you're top 25% of the country, you're so much smarter than everybody else, you need to keep working hard though so that you can rule the world one day. And like, you get this thing in your head where you're like, oh, I'm better than everyone because I'm just so intelligent, and I don't even need to try, I'm so clever. And then you fail at something and your whole world just disintegrates, because turns out that's not how the world works. And I failed so badly. And I remember just sitting on the sofa, just like staring into space and being like, I'm gonna have to do something, but I don't know what I have the capacity to do. And I was gonna do like animal management or something that was like a BTEC, where you basically rock up as an apprentice and you earn £2 an hour and you just shovel animal poo for like a day or whatever. Like, that was like what my mind went, well, I can't be a psychiatrist, so I suppose I'll just scoop poo for a living. And my mum was just like, no, absolutely not. And I moved schools and I picked up English, still did sociology instead of psychology, and I still did biology. And then I was like, oh, this whole English essay malarkey, so easy. It's so easy to write an essay because you just tell people your opinions in a really articulate way. I can do that. I can articulate my opinions. That's fine. And I think it was at that point that I realised it wasn't necessarily being a writer. I think I realised I was a creative person and I enjoyed entertaining other people, and not necessarily being a class clown, but just creating something that other people would enjoy was a large part of who I wanted to be. I wanted to be able to put stuff out. Now, I can't draw to save my life. I always joke that when I did art at GCSE, I was sat next to this girl who just made me feel so inadequate. She's now got a BAFTA award for like her artwork, and I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense. Of course I was inadequate against this like amazing artist, of course. But writing was always something that I found very, very natural. Like, storytelling has always been my jam, and I think it was at that point that I was like, yeah, even if I don't necessarily want to be a writer, I want to be writing. And I remember on my first day at university, my lecturer for creative writing, and that was the thing, is I did a joint honours, so I did English with creative writing, because I thought if I exclusively do creative writing as a degree, no one will ever take me seriously, because they'll just think it's like a DOS subject. So if I do it like half and half, then at least I can show them that I kind of know what I'm talking about. And like the first half an hour of this lecture was just him being like, you guys will never get published, you'll never get work, writing is the hardest thing you'll ever do, like everyone will hate everything you write, no one will understand you, and just like going on for like, it felt like days of just being like super negative. And I am so stubborn that the more he banged on about how it was never going to happen, the more I was like, yeah, like I am though, like I didn't know how much I wanted it, now you've told me I can't have it, I'm going to be a writer. Just to prove you wrong, I'm going to be a writer. And I think it was at that point that I was like, yeah, this is what I really, really want. And no one was going to stop me. Like, I've had so many rejections. Like, I've submitted so many different types of book. I've learned so many lessons from those experiences in doing the masters and doing courses and talking to other writers and things like that. And I do appreciate that it's 50% luck and 50% just sheer dogged determination. And every step is a step closer, even if it doesn't feel like it, because like I haven't submitted to an agent in ages, partly because I've been working on this, but partly because I'm self-employed, so putting time into that. So I never wanted to be a teacher. That was not what I wanted at all. That was a safety net job that kind of took over my life for 5 years. And I loved it. I loved being a teacher. The kids are hilarious. And there are so many of them that like I know I will be telling stories about them for years to come, because they were just special moments, you know. Like so at the time of me teaching, our Prime Minister was called Theresa May, and I got into a full-on argument with a year 10 because she was convinced that Theresa May was the shampoo Tresemme, and that they were the same thing. And like to this day, I think that is the funniest thing I've ever heard. Like, so,
my gosh, wow. Oh yeah, my friend Lindsay is a freshman English teacher, and she's like, I love teaching and I love freshmen, but sometimes they're just so completely gone. And she's like, I love it. I don't know how she does it. I think it takes a special kind of person to be a teacher.
Oh, it really does. I think it does, because to be a teacher, you have to want it, regardless of all the bureaucracy that is getting in your way of doing a good job. So, like, you'll spend, for every hour that you teach, you spend 2 hours planning and 6 hours marking. So that's for every hour you teach. And they expect you to teach at least 12 hours a week. There aren't that many hours in a week, like to put all that time in. So you end up taking it home or staying late or doing a bad job and then feeling guilty that you've done a bad job. And I remember a friend of mine's a head teacher, and she always says that she hates having to give the like full staff assemblies where she's like, you know, there are loads of people who haven't done these things and that's an issue. So now we need to rectify that. Half the room will feel bad even though they're not the ones responsible. And they will be the good teachers that feel bad even though they're not responsible. And then you'll have the other half, which are bad teachers, who just go, well, that's not my problem, and it's their fault that it hasn't got done. So I think it is a really tough job, but it's so rewarding. Like, it's so rewarding. And like I said, I did love it, and I greatly admire other teachers. I never wanted it as badly as I wanted other things, so I had to end at some point.
So do you think your Fat Lip Volume 2 might be student stories? Have you thought about that at all?
I'd have to wait a couple more years, because some of them are still in school and they absolutely would know that it was me that's writing about. Like they would so put that together. But yeah, I could definitely see myself in Fat Lip. Obviously, there's the Fall, which is about a class that I taught, and it wasn't during my training year, but it was shortly after that. So it was one of the first opportunities where I was in a classroom by myself, and I think those are the moments when you really work out whether you're a good teacher or not. Like, yeah. Not only that, but you work out if you're a good person or not. Like, because obviously in the full, like, for context of anyone that's watching it, I was teaching a class where they were all very close. They were lovely kids and they liked to banter with me. And the problem with teenagers is you have a couple of jokes with them and they just assume you're their best friend. And you have to make sure that, like, no, there's a line. And one of my students said something really inappropriate about my weight, and the whole class turned against him. And I did nothing about it because I was like, I mean, you basically just called me a fatty and then immediately got shot down by everybody. I think that's karma. So,
wow. Yeah, that's community consequence right there.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of segues into the next question that I had, which is that I really loved that there was plus size representation, like right there at the beginning. It was established. And I wondered, let's see, I'm trying to read my own writing. And then I felt that in high school myself, that was definitely, I was a bigger girl. And I wondered if you wanted to talk about your thoughts on the representation that's out there, both good and bad, that you drew on while you were writing Bridesmaids Survival Guide.
Yeah, so when I was a teen, I don't think plus size rep was really a thing, or certainly it wasn't in the way that I think is positive, because I'm doing like a reread of some Meg Cabot books at the moment, and there's obviously her book series, the Heather Wells trilogy or series or whatever, that is size 12 isn't fat, and the whole time it's this size 12 girl being treated like she's a massive effer, and it's just like, that's not like, that's not a good rep. By having everyone treat you like absolute poo just because you're bigger is not good rep. And it's been one of those things where I don't necessarily know. Okay, so for context, my dad went to a business seminar where they pulled someone up on stage and they spent 20 minutes listing all of the amazing things this person had done, and then the speaker slapped him around the face and said, now tell me one of the 20 things that I've said that's positive about you. And this guy was like, I can't, because when you have those violent or negative moments, that's all you retain. It doesn't matter how much positive you've had prior to that. And I think a lot of the TV that I watched as a teen and a lot of the books that I read as a teen, size was either just not mentioned or bigger people were the villains. And that was it. Those were your options. Right. And I think the first time that I realised it was okay to be a bigger person was when Rebel Wilson did an interview on the Graham Norton show, and she had just been in Bridesmaids and she'd played like the really grim flatmate.
Yeah.
And she had said that one thing she really liked about her size was that she was always going to play interesting characters, because they were never going to give her the main beige character. It was always going to be the villain or the creepy friend or whatever. They were always going to be fun roles to play. And I think that was when I started to go, oh, it's not a bad thing to not be a stick, because I've always had body issues and I've always had so I used to play rugby, and when I quit rugby, it had a massive impact on my size, because I was still eating the same, but I wasn't working out to the same extent. And it really did affect me. And I think this book was kind of me just going, it's okay, like whatever size you are, it doesn't matter, you are still allowed to like yourself. And regardless of what size you are, it's not the only facet of your personality that you have, and it's not going to be everything that someone sees when they look at you.
Yeah.
Because I've got quite a weird body shape where I am a size 20, but I'm kind of in proportion. Like, I don't necessarily carry it as much as I know other size 20 women do. And I find that really jarring, because then people make comments of like, oh, I look like a massive size 20. And I'm like, thanks, guys. God. Like, it's those moments. And I think it's the passive aggression and the microaggressions and things like that, where it's just like, I know you didn't mean to say that. And I know what you said has nothing to do with me and everything to do with how you view size. That still hurts. And I think for me, especially, there's a few moments later on in Bridesmaid Survival Guide where Rev she does suffer fat phobia. And she does have to deal with people treating her like crap and using it as a really quick and easy way to insult her. But knowing that that is not her self-worth. And I really wanted her, even if it's completely unrealistic for a teenage girl to be okay with her body, I really wanted her to be like, that's your problem, not mine. Yeah. So I think that's what I wanted. I wanted to have something where, regardless of what size you are or who you are that's reading this book, Rev doesn't care what you think of her body. Like, she just doesn't care. Like, she cares that you insulted her and she cares that you think it's important, but she doesn't care what your opinions of her size are. And I think that's as close to good rep as I could get, I think, because I'm not here to tell anyone whether they are or aren't healthy, or whether they should or shouldn't lose weight, or should or shouldn't work out, because everyone is different. And I think more importantly is accepting what you want for yourself. So that was as hard as I was going to work on that.
Well, I love that, because again, I was heavy in high school, and I read a lot, and the women that I read about were not heavy. They talked about how their waists were tucked, or how they're perfectly hourglass, or so it's hard to be comfortable in your own skin. Whenever, especially as a teen, and especially when all these people who you're idolizing as a teen are not the same size as you. So I think it's really great for Rep to have that, that kind of confidence. If it was in more books, I feel like more teens would be more comfortable in their own skin. Yeah.
Well, it's normal then, isn't it? I think if you normalize confidence like that, it just becomes second nature. I think it's why things like positive affirmations work. You can trick your brain into thinking a thing. Anxiety is the opposite. It's where your brain is trying to trick you into doing a thing, and you try and convince yourself, oh no, this is unacceptable. And I think there are a lot of people who have been severely let down by representation in the past, and I think there was no way I was going to go into this and make it worse. My characters are never going to be your stereotypical teeny tiny people, because they don't really exist. And even if they do exist, they don't see themselves like that. I don't know anyone in real life who doesn't have some kind of hang up about something, whether it's their shape or size or hair color or their teeth or their eye color, whatever it is, because we're so constantly being told, but you're not perfect. And that's something that actually, you're not, and that's fine. But I think it's that bit that's kind of left off from the end, and it's a really cruel thing, because they're just like, 9 times out of 10, if someone's trying to make you feel bad about yourself, it's because they're trying to sell you something, and it's just like, what they want is your money. Like, they don't care about you or your feelings. So it's a cruel thing to do when what they really want is to just take something from you anyway. So
yeah. I love that too, that you do start out with like the bra thing, because that's the welcome to Bridesmaid Survival Guide. We are arguing about a bra. And if I'm remembering correctly, Rev is sort of like, she makes a passive comment about her boobs and the fact that she knows they're big, but doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so great. I wish that I would have loved my boobs that much whenever I was a teenager. Right? Like, because especially when you're a bigger girl, that's like a thing. You know? It's like, I've got boobs. And I really loved that. I was like, yes, she's proud of her chest. Go you.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's really, I was talking to someone the other day about how I'm kind of worried that comment about her focusing on her boobs is going to date the book a little bit, because where bums and legs are so hyper fixated on at the moment, maybe boobs, it really doesn't matter. Like, I don't know.
They're out now.
So it's like, no, they're just not as in, you know. Like, it's all these things. Are like, I'm like, I don't know. Does that date it already? I don't know. Does it make me sound old that I care about boobs? I don't know.
Does it make me sound old that I care about breast size? That's hilarious. That is hilarious. So then this journey of hers that you said you're taking also into uni, is that kind of like where your focus is next? Is that the next thing that you want to do is to put out the second book of this? Or are you thinking about kind of like tangenting for a second off on something else?
So the plan is to self-publish a book every year until I get an agent. This one has had so many delays that I don't know if that's going to happen, because I need to actually finish the book I want to get agented. So it's one of those things where I'm like, right, I can spend the next 5 years putting a book out every single year. I can do that. I know I can do that. But if the whole point is that I'm doing that whilst I'm trying to get an agent, I need that book finished first. And because the one that I want to get agented is so much more complicated and has so much more in it, it does need more time and it does need more development. So hopefully I will have something that is agentable by next year. And then even if I just take a year out and then come back to Rev and her friends at a later stage, I will still continue to do that. I'm fully committing to 5 books. And I think the writing process was a lot easier than the editing process. And it's kind of that's caused delays, and obviously my artist breaking both of her arms was not ideal either.
Right.
Things like that. My printer closing his warehouse for 6 months and not knowing when I was actually able to get anything printed. That has also been an issue. Like, things like that have caused massive delays. So I don't have like a set plan. Once this book is out, I think I will then start on the next one, but I will be doing it in tandem with the thing that I want to get agented. Purely because I don't like writing one thing at a time anyway, because I find that I'm far more likely... I've never had writer's block, but I think that's just because I have such a short attention span that if something isn't working on the page, I will pick up something else. So if the next book, or at least the first draft of the next book, becomes the project I do whilst I'm working on the agented thing, fine, and then I can come back to it and refine it and make it better. I know what's going to happen in the next book. To be fair, I know what's going to happen in the next 4 books, right. But it's just one of those things, because I am very much, I don't know about you as a writer, but I am very much a planner. Like, I love having like my little timelines, and I'll have like notebooks and post-it notes, and when it comes to like the final prep before I start writing it, I have everything in front of me. I know the beginning, middle and end, and then everything else is just kind of finessing how they get there and making sure that the audience doesn't necessarily know that I've put this much time into thinking about it, but then the audience doesn't have to think about it because it's there for you to enjoy. I'm really bad for both over-describing and under-describing settings, for example, because I'm just like, oh, but does the audience care that like that's the type of tree that they're leaning against? I won't put it in. And then someone else is like, oh, they're leaning against a tree, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should have put in at least that there was a tree there. Do you know what I mean? So it's that kind of thing. Which comes out clean in the editing process. So I will just continue to write, and then whatever comes out first
will be what comes out.
Yeah.
I am the same way with not being able to really work on one thing at a time. I think that we're similar in that there's like a lot of ideas, you know, and so it's like, okay, this one's boring. Let's go to this one.
Yeah.
This one sounds fun.
Let's move on to the next one. Yeah.
As far as like planning versus pantsing, I fall in this really weird place in the middle where I know what I want to happen. I know where I want it to end. I know kind of what I want this big climactic point to be. So like I've got my 3 points similar to how you have it. But then I will also like start to outline what I think needs to happen between there. But that part of the outline, Beast says hello.
He's so cute!
He is. He's very much, he wants to go yell at the people that are working on the cardboard. Yeah. But the places in the middle, I outline them for my brain's sake, but then once I start writing it, it's complete carnage. You know, I'll take that out. I do this weird thing too, where like I keep deleted scenes because I'm like, maybe that'll like work its way in.
Oh, I do that.
Something like that.
I have like pages of pages where I'm like, but I might need that paragraph later. I never look back over it. I never like go, oh yeah, I'll use that. I never go back to it, but I also don't want to throw it away. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, because I know they say like you need to kill your darlings. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just need to lock your darlings in a cupboard and never look at them again. It's not the same thing. They're not dead. It's the Schrodinger's paragraph.
Schrodinger's cupboard. Yes. Yeah. Yes. They go in Schrodinger's cupboard. That's great. Yeah, I think that I have a lot of respect for people who can just like plot a book, write the book. My friend Lindsay's like that. She goes through like all this processing and then she writes the book and it's really great. But I get so bored in that process. And I'm one of those people that if I write too much of it right now, I'm going to feel like I already wrote it and there's no point in actually like, what's the point in writing the book at that point?
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, I think... Get down. Sorry.
It's just that his face is like...
Yes.
Just gonna gently lick you.
Yes, he's the biggest baby and like the biggest demon at the same time. He's insane. So insane.
That's fair.
So something that I feel like I've noticed, and maybe I'm just completely oblivious, maybe this isn't the truth at all, but I feel like your platform, like with the BookTube, and then Bookstagram and all those things, which will link, you know, to you below. Those seem to be separate from your writing stuff a lot of the time, like until the book is out. At least with Batlip, when the book was out, it was like, oh, it's like, you know, it's in the waypoint pictures, or it's in this profile picture, or, you know, things like that. But you don't seem to publicize a lot of like your process, and I wondered if that's like a conscious decision, or if it's just sort of how it happened, or, you know, what your thought was on that.
With Fatlip, it was not a conscious decision. It was more just... I was very, very new to BookTube because I'd only started in the November before, and then in February or March I launched it. And I think with it being so new, I didn't know how to make it like a here's the process of kind of video. Right. And I certainly hadn't done any kind of like vlogs into the process of it. I hadn't done any vlogs, full stop. So I think it was a case of that wasn't content that I was comfortable making. But the real reason that there isn't more content about me as a writer rather than other books is just that I am so bad at promoting myself when I could be promoting other people. And it's nothing to do with confidence, because I'll talk about myself for days. Like, it's nothing to do with that. It's more just that, like, given the opportunity to talk about Fatlip or anything else, I will choose anything else because I'm far more excited about it. And like, I'm just really bad at talking about stuff that I've worked on. And like with Bridesmaid Survival Guide, I had 18 different video ideas of videos I was going to do in the lead up to getting it out. And then we had delay after delay after delay. So I was like, right, don't waste those video ideas because they can still be used in promotion for Bridesmaid Survival Guide. And then the further into delays we got, like 2 months later, like publication day was a month ago. Like it's so silly that it's still not out yet, that I was like, oh, I'll just do one now and then maybe another one later. And like I haven't posted in ages because I'm just like, do I just like do those ideas? I don't know. So I think it's one of those things where like whilst there is an audience for it, it's a much smaller audience than people that come to my content just for my book reviews and thoughts and genuine chaos. And I think, the other half of it is just that I just find it so much more fun talking about other people's stuff than I do talking about my own, you know? Like I recently have just finished The Murder of Graham Catton, which is a fantastic thriller, and I uploaded my wrap-up that has that in it. And it's just me ranting for 6 minutes about how amazing this book is. And I'm like, where's the energy for anything I've made that's like matches that? Yeah. And it's not that I don't like it or don't think it's worth people's time. I'm just not as good at it to be like, buy the thing. Like I'm just, I'm not very good at that.
Okay. That's fun. Okay, so where can people find Bridesmaids Survival Guide once all of the hang-ups are done and the universe decides to let you deliver this book?
Yes, finally, which actually shouldn't be too long because it's with the proofreaders now, so it shouldn't be too much longer, because once they're done with it, it goes to print and then I can send it out. So it is available to pre-order via Waypoint Books, which is my independent bookshop. There is a signed version and a standard paperback. You don't have to get the signed version. It was just one of those things, when I did Fat Lip, I had so many people message me and say, oh, you posted it to me, but you didn't sign it. And I was like, I didn't realise that was something you wanted, because some people asked, and I'm a nobody. Like, why do you want my autograph? That's weird. So I've done it slightly differently this time, where you can just have the standard paperback if you're like, I mean, I might not like it, and then I'll have to unhaul it, and it's got your name in it. So, and then there's also the signed version available. And then once it is finally printed, there will also be an ebook version where you'll be able to download it digitally, which will be quite cool. I'm not selling, where Fat Lip was available via Amazon as well as Waypoint, I will be selling Bridesmaid Survival Guide exclusively through Waypoint, because as great as Amazon is for getting your stuff out there, and you can make some really, really good money through that, I'm a control freak and would much rather just have it all kind of go through me. And I really trust that the artists and the printer who's going to be producing it, it's just expert quality. I mean, you've got Fat Lip behind you, that like matte finish and stuff like that. It's really nice. And I just think I'm a control freak, so I'd just rather it be where I can keep an eye on it, and then if people do buy in bulk, which weirder things have happened, then I've got them that I can send.
Right. That's awesome. Okay, cool.